I'm outside this morning moving plants back and forth because I have two greenhouses. One is the big greenhouse I'm always in, and then I have a small one off the side of my house that still it was full of plants too, and they need to come out and be hardened off. But I just kind of wanted to show you the difference because I think it's cool, and if you're watching my channel, you probably like plants and you'll probably think that it's cool too. I'm just gonna give you this little example of how different growing conditions, even though they were both in a greenhouse, but they both have different climates, and each greenhouse produces a different plant. So the plants in my big tunnel are probably the best group of seedlings that I've ever grown. And I think that it's just because obviously they're both greenhouses, so they'll both get really warm, plenty of sunlight, they're both in full sun. Actually, the greenhouse in the front beside my house gets more sun than the greenhouse behind, or than the big tunnel, because in the big tunnel, the sun doesn't come up over my garage until like 9. Now that the sun's coming up earlier and it's changing a little bit, it might be different, but as of like a month ago. And then the greenhouse on the side of my house, it gets full sun as soon as the sun comes up. I just want you to see the difference. So this is a tomato grown in my tunnel greenhouse. These are two cherry tomatoes. So cherry tomatoes usually get longer and ganglier than a slicer, but look at the root system on these. Aren't they beautiful in these soil balls? I love doing it like this, although it did take a little bit of extra time. But they're nice and compact. They're like kind of squatty, but their stalks are really thick and they can withstand wind. They're not floppy. And I think it's because of the extra ventilation that I had in the tunnel versus the little greenhouse, because in the tunnel I open up both sides and the wind really moves through there, so it's constantly blowing around your stems and strengthening them. And then this is an example of one, and you might not even be able to tell. This one you definitely can. So can you tell the difference in this stem versus this stem? Like this one is thinner, it's floppier, its leaves are a little bit thinner versus this one. I hope it relates on camera, but every year you learn something different. I wouldn't have thought that it would have been that different because they're both in similar growing conditions. But I think the wind movement in the high tunnel really created really strong seedlings, and I'm really excited about it. It is getting very full out here. I've filled up all my racks, and I honestly still have a few more things that I just don't have room for. I drove we have a hay wagon that we don't use for hay. We use it for either hauling wood out of the woods, because we heat our house with wood in the winter. But the whole thing is covered in plants that I'm hardening off. But it's exciting. It's like almost go time. As soon as these are hardened off, I'm gonna give them a few more days. It's gonna be planting time, which means sheer chaos is about to ensue here. But it's fine. And I got a little treat. I honestly can't remember what variety of calendula this is because I grow so many. I love them all. I dry calendula to use in like skincare products later in the season. So this is my first batch. While it's not ideal to have your plants blooming in the pot. So if you go to a store that is selling either vegetable starts or flowers, unless they're dwarf flowers, like supposed to be bedding plants, it's okay for them to be flowering. But you don't want your own starts to be flowering it's doing it out of stress, poor thing, because I just haven't got it out yet. But like, this is a plug. You don't want your calendula to be flowering, but hey, she looks honestly not that sad. There's a couple sad leaves at the bottom. So it's a little treat for me, but ideally you would have planted your things out before they flowered, but it's fine. I'm gonna be direct sowing lots of calendula because it's super easy to direct sow. But yeah, this is exciting. I was making my way, where did I put it? Oh, I left my tea. I was making my way to the greenhouse. This is my favorite mason jar. So here at our house, I have a few like little plastic cups for the kids, but I'm really like growing out of little kids. Hunter's almost 5, so I can almost throw away the plastic. I hate using plastic, but that's on another day. This is my favorite mason jar. It's like tall, it's not a quart and it's not a pint, and it's like the perfect drinking amount. And I only have one of it, and I'm so scared that I'm gonna break it because it's my favorite cup. And you know what happens to your favorite things? They get broken. Ooh, it is warm in here. I'm in the tunnel. I haven't really had a chance to grab my camera in the last few days because of the solar panel noise. They're pounding those long posts in the ground, and it just sounds awful in the background of a video. My last video had it in there, but like, how am I supposed to live my life when they are ruining it? I brought all of my microgreen seeds out here because that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to try to succession sow a lot of microgreens, especially in the early season when I don't have much else, because I'm going to the farmer's market this weekend, ready or not. So I gotta have something to take with me. I'm gonna have veggie starts, obviously, and microgreens, and maybe a few heads of lettuce, because these are getting so nice and big. So by the weekend, those will be perfect size. I will probably cut them up for salad mix. Haven't really decided yet. This is my first time selling food at a farmer's market, and I'm just nervous. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just winging it. So I seeded these trays about 3 days ago, and you can see. All I did was I spread a thin layer of soil, just regular potting soil, and then I just broadcast the seeds on here. I've got 3 different kinds I'm trying. I have a mild mix, a spicy mix, and basil, which I'm so excited about because I feel like I could make pesto with that before I have basil from outside. So, and I love pesto, and I go all year. I'm gonna can some this year. I'm going to try to can some because, or freeze it. I think it does better if you freeze it, because I miss pesto. I love basil. One important thing for your microgreens is you need to have a tray with the bottom holes, because you don't want your bottom tray to be the 10-20 tray with no holes, because it will take in too much water, and that's where you get those kind of like fungal diseases. Or it might rot your seeds or your little starts, like the damping off. So you want a way to drain your microgreen tray. I hate when buckets get stuck together. Oh, I got it. I'm just gonna use one of these black floral buckets to get my soil in, but I wanted to tell my fellow flower people, if there's any out there, if you go to your local grocery store florist, for me it's a Kroger. If I go after, I'll call her like the week before a holiday, like big floral holidays like Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, whatever else they get flowers in for, the 4th of July, I don't know. But if you call a week or 2 ahead of time and say, what do you do with your black buckets? Are you going to throw them away? And if they say yes, say, will you save them for me? And more than likely they'll be really happy to save them for you and give them to you instead of throwing them away. But doing it that way, I've been able to score like 50 buckets at a time from the florist. And then you have these nice floral buckets, but you can also do anything you want with them. They just don't have a handle, but it comes in really handy, and just the more you know. So I decided to do microgreens this spring because, to be honest, I don't have much else, and this is a super quick turnaround. It takes like 7 to 10 days from the time that you seed your trays to like harvest, and that seems really easy. So the first ones came up surprisingly fast. So without really much rhyme or reason, I just sprinkle the seeds thickly onto the top. You don't really want any open areas. You just want to make sure that there's seeds on top of your soil, and then I water it in. And one step that I have been doing that has really sped up germination, and I mean really sped up as in like 24 hours later I come back and check and they're already germinating. I was shocked. But I put them on a heat mat, and I didn't know how well they would receive that because I am in a warm greenhouse, and most of your microgreens are going to be in the brassica family or the mustard or some of those leafy greens that don't like it too warm. And since it's still cool at night, it's around like 50 at night now, finally, thank the Lord. But I've been using this heat mat, and that really has made everything pop. But I figured out in a greenhouse, everything dries out really fast. So I will seed a tray and I'll water it in, and I'll seed as many trays as I need to do that day. And then when I'm done, you can't leave the top bare, especially in a greenhouse, because the soil dries out so quickly because you're only putting a thin layer in the bottom. So I just take a blank tray and I just nestle it on the top to cover it, and then that keeps your tray from drying out, because I had to learn that the hard way. My cucumbers and squash that I planted in these soil balls are finally starting to pop up. Happy birthday, little guys. I'm so excited because, you know, it's go time. I don't really need to give these much of a head start inside. I kind of just wanted to germinate these cucumbers and squash because the soil is still cool, so it would take a long time to germinate those seeds. And if you have any kind of little rodents, squash seeds are really delicious, so I didn't want any little critter to come along and eat my seeds. And my okra is coming up as well. Okra is something that actually prefers to be direct seeded, and I've never started it inside. I've always direct seeded it, but the name of the game this year is to get stuff as soon as I can possibly get stuff. So I wanted to have an option to seed now, because in my area the ground is really not warm enough for okra until late May. And so if I can get one crop in before that, and then I can direct sow a second succession, I think that that's going to work out much better. Another thing that I'm really excited about that's really starting to pop in this greenhouse, and that reminds me I need to find a place to go harden it off on, is all my cucamelons. So I did my cucamelons in the 2-inch soil block, and that's worked out really good. I've had really good germination, honestly, probably 98%, which is good. But the reason why you want to start your cucamelon inside is because they take forever to get growing. It's, what is today? The 8th of May, I think? I don't know. When you're a stay-at-home mom, you really start to lose track of days. But anyway, I started this cucamelon on the 3rd of April, so it's been a little bit over a month, and it's only just this big. Cucamelon really takes a long time, but once you start to see the little tendrils This one is an overachiever. She's the biggest. Next biggest is this one. Once you start to see the little tendrils, it's about to take off. So I need to get these hardened off so I can put them out in the garden. But to get to this point, it literally took forever. So it doesn't grow at the same rate that a regular cucumber does. Just FYI. I have this spotty tray of basil. The seeds were kind of old and I didn't have the best germination on it. So I think I'm gonna plug it in right here by the tomatoes because I've tried to interplant these rows in my tunnel to use the valuable space nicely. And so I don't have anything going beside these tomatoes like I do in the other rows. So I can plug these in. One little trick I am doing, for one, I need to water in here anyway. The top is getting kind of dried out. But for two, I want to plug this basil in. And I know that I have, my drip line is 12 inches apart. So the holes for the drips are 12 inches. So I'm just going to put the basils. I just started it. So it's going to make like a little wet spot. Right, perfect spacing for this basil. So I'm just going to plug it in like right where the drips are. And get it going because tomatoes and basil just go together, don't they? So I'm just going to pop out these plugs. When your starts are a little bit more mature, you can gently tug. They tell you not to, but I do it all the time. Pull the whole plug out if it's got a good root system, but since these are so small, you kind of have to push the plug out or else you'll rip it off. But I'm just gonna plant this whole thing. I'm just going to put it right on the edge of the bed next to the drip tape, and that's it. I'm just gonna work my way down this row. I got a box of kitties. The kittens are roughly 3 weeks old right now, and they are getting rambunctious. They're crawling all over this box. And the kids have been begging to get them out and play with them. And now that they're finally at an age where they can wobble, they're getting less wobbly and more walking around. We're gonna get them out and see what they do.
Good girl. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. I give kisses to every single kitty, also dog. Because they're so cute. I wish we could keep this girl.
Making my last rounds in the greenhouse tonight. Before we milk, I'm gonna close all the sides up. I like to close up the sides of the tunnel a little bit early while the sun is still out so it can trap some of the heat in here. It's like I want to capture more of our evening, but I am literally so dead tired that it's even hard to make words by the time nighttime comes. Because tell me if anybody else is like this, and also how do I fix it, because I don't want to be like this anymore. By the time 4 o'clock comes around, I have hit a wall. What can I eat? What supplements do I need? What tea? What herb? What is going to give me energy for the rest of the day? Because I just don't have it, and I honestly don't know if there's an answer for it, but I want one. Everything in here just looks so alive, and it's so exciting. These are the things that make me happy. When the world gets too overwhelming, I just need to focus on things I can control instead of things I can't. And yes, I'm talking to myself, to a camera, but I'm gonna watch this later and edit it and just remember that. Because the world feels really heavy right now, and everything that's going on here, and I can't control it, but I wish I could. So if things feel out of control just as much for you as it does for me, just grow a garden. At least you can go there and escape a little bit and have food at home and And plus, when you take said food you grew inside and you feed it to your family, you can remind them and say, I grew that, and I grew that, and I grew that. That was like my favorite thing to do. In my first little backyard garden, I would take dinner inside, which would be like one scrappy little salad with like radishes in it, or the first eggs that I got from the chickens. I would make breakfast and be like, we grew those ourselves, and it felt really good. And now the more that I do this, the more that it's normal. Like majority of the time that we're eating, at least 50% is from here on the farm, if not the whole thing. All of our meat for 1 solid year now. Yeah, all of our meat has been ours. And it's getting ready to be veggie time, so all of those will be ours. It just feels really good. So if the world feels a little bit out of control, do things that you can control. Grow a garden, feed your family, make your kids try those vegetables they never wanted to try before. I don't know, you guys. I'm just trying to hang in there, as is everybody else. So, thank you for hanging out with me today. Until next time.